Hey friends, happy Wednesday to everyone. Welcome back to my channel. We are going to continue with our August theme of crashing our stash. We are going to revisit several of the bases that we have created tutorials for in the past and give them a new life with a different collection and possibly some changes along the way. So for this album, we have a paper bag base, and there are full-size flip pages as well as tip-ins and pockets that hold Z-fold inserts. So I hope that you are inspired to create with your stash as well. And if you'd like to make this one with me, then stay tuned and we will make it together. Here's the base that we're going to be working with today. And this is the actual base I created in the previous tutorial. And so I'm going to go ahead and link to that. You will find that link at the top of the description, and I'll have it timestamped. So it'll go automatically right to the point where the tutorial for this base starts. And the changes that we're making are after the base is created. So once you get to this point, you're caught up in this video. And so the finished book size for this is 6 1/8 by 5, and that's determined by the size of that bag. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start the layering process. So just a quick flip through, we've got two full-size page flips here, the pocket in the middle that's created by that bag, and then your other side will flip open so they open outward like a regular book. And so we have two sections that have the pockets in the middle and also a very nice sturdy cover created with 110-pound cardstock. And so this is already pretty chunky, and when we start the layering process, it is going to get very thick and heavy and a little bit of a wedge shape, and that's just how I like it. So one of the great things about this base again is that all of the pages on the inside are going to be the same measurement, and that is very handy for cutting so that you can get all your pieces cut very quickly. And so the first addition that we're going to make to this to change it up a little bit from the previous tutorial is to add some tip-ins. Now this collection is authentic, and like I said, for August we're just working through our stash, and so I am not promoting this exact collection, but I think it works really nice for summer projects, and you can go ahead and use whatever collections that you have on hand, or even combine them if you have bits and pieces from one to the other, as long as it has a similar color palette and design style. I say anything goes when you're crashing your stash. And so the tip-ins that I want to include are a combination of some of the journal card, the cutter parts that were included in the collection, and then they also had a very small little paper pad that had some additional images on it. So I'm going to combine those. So when I make my tip-in, I cut my journal card down to 3 7/8 by 2 7/8, and then I can center it on my cardstock as the tip-in. This is 65-pound weight cardstock. It starts at 4 by 4, and then I score it at 3. So that leaves me exactly a 4 by 3 portion on the front, and then I can center that image into it. So I've also cut an additional piece of the pattern paper to finish the backside of those tip-ins. Now, if you want, it would be nice if you had a space where you could add some journaling or some non-contrasting paper that you could write directly on. But for the purpose of this particular collection, I didn't have that non-contrasting pattern, and so I decided just to go ahead and use that anchor, and that is cut to be the same size as the journal card for the front of the tip-in. And so I want my tip-ins to open outward, and that keeps all the bulk from this on the outside of the book so that the inside doesn't get too jammed up to work properly. And so my full-size pages are going to be 6 high by 4 7/8 for that cardstock, and the pattern paper is 5 7/8 by 4 3/4. So I'm going to get that nice border of this pretty blue cardstock, as well as the base is going to have a white border around that as well. So it's going to be hard to show all the page as I work along, because that center pocket does want to fold over just a bit. I think I have a need to create things that are hard to get pictures of for some reason. But you can see now when you open your left-hand page, you have that journal card flip and then your full-size page flip here. And this is just exactly the base that I created for the previous tutorial. So you're gonna get those full-size page flips included in that tutorial. And so now I'm going to switch and go to this kind of oar or paddle pattern. I like the contrast, the very dark pattern with very small oars. And so I'm going to continue this for this page flap as well as on the right hand side. That also helped me to utilize my paper more frugally. Even though we're trying to use it up, I don't see any reason to waste it. So I just went ahead and cut all of the pieces for this. So I was able to cover both of the insides of both of the page flips with one pattern of paper. And so let's go ahead and do the same for this side as well. And I'm going to have these pages match because they will show together. And I have another of those fun journal card cut apart images. I just kind of swapped out the blues and the reds so that it would be a definite layering pattern on there and be more noticeable. And of course I've got my anchors on that side as well. And so I'll just flip this over. It's easier to get these adhered if you can see the longest side to get it centered. And so here is the right hand page, and of course we'll do the same pattern as I mentioned for the inside. I don't think there is much direction in this. It's either one way or the other, and so I don't know that you could get them upside down. Just depends on how you cut them to get the most frugal use from your paper. And I just really like this lighter blue in the border, kind of brightens it up a little bit. And it coordinates nicely with some of the blue patterns that we have in the other papers. So here is our first set of flips. Those are done along with our first set of those tip-ins. Now we need to cover this pocket. And so I've got a couple pieces here that are just offcuts from the other pages. So they are similar. They are not going to match exactly, but they're still a red stripe. And I kind of liked that it coordinated well with my cut apart image. And so the paper, and so the cardstock measurement for these to cover the flat pockets is going to be 6 high by 3 3/4 for the cardstock, and the pattern paper is 5 7/8 by 3 5/8. And I'm just gonna flip this around, like I said, to see the widest part so that I could get it centered. And then I have a similar pattern for this side. I'm very sorry if that comes across as hard on your eyes on camera. It's not so bad in person, but I realize that some of these patterns are a little bit busy to show on camera. And so we'll just flip it to this side. It's a little bit easier to see. Now we're going to go for our second change from our original. Instead of having two of the inserts that would go into the pocket that's created with the bottom of the bag, I decided it would be fun to create kind of a Z-fold insert that we could decorate with the pattern paper and the cardstock, and then tuck one side of it into that pocket to secure it. So I'm starting with a piece of 65-pound weight cardstock. It's 5 inches high by 12 inches wide, and you scored it at 4 and then also 8. So that's going to give me equal portions of 5 by 4. And so our cardstock for this is going to be 4 7/8 inch high by 3 7/8 inch wide. The pattern paper is going to be 4 3/4 high by 3 3/4 wide. And I did cut all of these pieces from the same sheet of paper. I just flipped it over to the B side so that I could have an alternating pattern. And so this was a full sheet. That was very helpful to get through more of that stash paper. And so I was able to just get this tucked into that pocket. Remember, we have some adhesive at the bottom, so that will hold it in place. and also keeps it above the top of the pocket, so it's easy to pull in and out. Now, because this has so many folds in it, I decided to add only one for each of the pockets, and that helps to reduce a little bit of the bulk. We do want a chunky wedge-shaped book, but at some point we do need to be able to close it, so I decided to have just one. There is more room in this pocket if you have some additional flat keepsakes or mementos that you want to store in here and not have adhere down to the book, so that's just something to keep in mind. And so this is going to be the first section. This book has two similar sections, and then remember, for this book we did add that second piece of cardstock that slips down into this portion that would be the edge. And so if you wanted to fill this with additional items, you would just not add this second piece of cardstock that slips down in, and that helps to keep my pockets together. But for the sake of this book, I had a lot of bulk going. You can see already that it's pretty full just with half of our pieces in. And so I decided not to fill that. I would recommend, if you decide to fill these with some type of insert, that you have a tab on the top or some way to have it come further out from the edge so that you would be able to reach that easily and pull that in and out. So the second set of pages is going to be adhered just in the same process as the first set, as well as the measurements are the same. So I'm just going to turn a little music on, and I'll speed this up so that you can see the process, but we don't need to cover it again with all of the measurements. So I'll just go ahead and get this done, and then I'll be right back with you when this portion is all set. Okay, so I was working along and I got all of the inside covered. You'll notice that I also finished the back while I was at it in the spine. So the spine measurement is going to be 1 inch wide by 6 inches tall. And I did add that to a piece of 110-pound cardstock. And then I added it to the book with an additional layer of wet adhesive just to make sure that it's very secure. And so now I want to start working on this cover. And as I do, I want to include a piece of this beautiful blue topaz ribbon. This is a stitched satin from a Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I have just added a little tape there to the base so that I could hold it in place temporarily as I work along. And so the measurements, once again, for these full-size pages are going to be the same. So that would be the back and the front cover as well. And I've got the same blue matting throughout just for a nice consistent look. And now you can see why I picked that lighter blue, because the pattern here has a beautiful hexagon image and it has some of that lighter blue. So I thought that would really help to brighten it up. And I do want to include a raised section. And so this cardstock is 5 high by 4 wide, and the pattern paper is 4 7/8 by 3 7/8. I decided to add a layering pattern, but just make sure that you have the same amount of the pattern paper to center on that blue cardstock. And I'm going to add this right to the middle, so this will be a nice raised area. I don't have room on this cover for a doily, so I'm gonna jump right to the focal image. And here is another one of those journal card or cut aparts. And so for this book, I was able to use 5, which I think is pretty good. I usually have lots of these journal cut aparts left over, so I was happy to get through many of them. I cut that out with a stitched coved edge, and so this gives it a little bit more detail. There is an eyelet here. I've put some twine through that, and then I did pop all this up on a spacer as well. So this is just building all of this dimension, and I'm going to put it right and high of middle just so that I'll have room for my flowers. So here is a very sweet arrangement created with a combination of little birdie craft flowers. Here is my white lotus flower from Really Reasonable Ribbon. I simply removed the center portion and swapped it out for these gold double head stamens just so that it would coordinate a little better with my little birdie craft flowers. And so these are the leaves that originally come on those flowers, and I typically take them off and reposition them because they're set so far in that you really don't notice them at all. And then rather than reaching for a navy for my outside leaf to keep it well coordinated, I decided to go for a pretty mirror cardstock. And that sort of goes along with the centers that I have on my flowers. And so I've built this at quite an angle because I needed to hug this corner, and I want all of those fragile pieces to remain inside the cover so that they won't become damaged. So I'm putting this on with hot glue, and I'm just making sure to shape it as I work along. Got a little bit of extra string from my twine there, so I'll just pull that off. Now I've got a couple of charms here, and I want to include these kind of ship wheels, so this kind of carries on our nautical theme. And so I'm putting that here, and I'm just positioning it so it overlaps a little bit. I have these tied together, and I can position them right where I want them to land. So a little hot glue. I'll just stick those strings right into that. Take off the excess string and cover those cut ends with a vintage button. Finish off the cover, I'm going to add a couple of these little sequins, and I'm going to secure those on with a little bit of Tombow. So that's all for our nautical themed folio created with our paper bag album for Crash Your Stash August. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you'd like to see more from my channel, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. You can find links for this tutorial as well as for our socials in the description below. If you're not already, I would love for you to join our family. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.